Algebra 2, rocking it out today. Page number 16. I'm pretty sure we did this question on one of your most recent tests or quizzes. So we've got to sketch at least one cycle of a sine curve. Amplitude is 2. Midline, ew, that's -1.5. And a period of 2 pi. So we have to sketch at least one cycle. So the first thing, remember, you need to, I'm so sorry, this is all over the place. First thing you need to pay attention to is your midline, okay? That is the key feature of a sine or a cosine graph. So our midline is going to be down at -1.5. Now we've got to label all of this stuff. So here's -1. There's -2. There's your midline. We could go this way too if you really wanted to. Okay? Now, why is the midline so important? Because your amplitude goes off of that midline. Your amplitude is going to go up 2 and down 2. So that doesn't mean you're going to go up to the number 2 and down to the number 2. You're going to go up 2 and down 2. So if you go down 2, well, hold on, let's do this. -3, -4. So you're in the middle here. So if you go down 2, you'd go down 1, 2. So there is your, we call that the minitude sometimes, right? That's your minimum, okay? It's just a fun way. That's at -3.5. And then if I go, here, let's do this, 1, 2. So if I go up 2, this is hard, 1, 2. There's your maxitude or your maximum. All right, so if you have this road map, you know this is the midline of the road, this is the edge of the road, this is the edge of the road. So your sine curve better hit those dotted lines, but it better not go outside of them. All right, so here we go. I know I'm graphing a sine curve. Sine curves start on the midline. And then I got to come up with an ending spot, which is 2 pi. Sine curves end on the midline. And then I need to know halfway. Halfway would be pi. Sine curves are on the midline. Okay, and then halfway between 0 and pi, which would be pi over 2, I'm going to be at the maximum, pi over 2. You don't have to label that. And then halfway would be 3 pi over 2. You'd be on the minimum. That would be one cycle, and I'm going to sketch that up. Remember, it's a nice curve. Make sure you hit the points that we've identified. And there you go. That is one cycle. So you could repeat it. You could go out to 4 pi. You could go backwards to -2 pi. But I just like to start on the y-axis and go forward. That's just my personal favorite. All right. Now, explain any differences between the graph you just made and the graph here. So I'm going to use this information to write my equation of this line. So it's going to be y equals, all right, the midline is at the very end. So minus 3 over 2. That goes at the end. In the very front is the amplitude. So my amplitude is 2. It is a sine graph. Now, remember that formula for period. Period is 2 pi over b. Now, this b value is what's going to go in this equation. But the problem is that I've got to solve it first. So I know the period of this graph was 2 pi. So I got to figure out what number is going to go in this equation here. So we're going to just teach you cross multiply. 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi. 2 pi times b is 2 pi b. I need to know what this is. So if I divide both sides by 2 pi divided by 2 pi, anything divided by itself is 1. You got to have a variable. Okay, if you don't have a variable, then you don't have an equation, okay? This is the equation of this sine graph. So if you look, amplitude is 2, sine, 1x 1x, this was non-existent. Minus 3 over 2, minus 3 over 2. So we have to know is what does this do to a graph? So anytime you have a number inside touching the x, that's going to move along the x-axis, okay? But remember, if something is with your x, it's messed up. So it's going to move in the opposite direction. So because of this minus, it's going to move it to the right. How far? Boom, pi over 3. Explain any differences? Well, this is a pretty bare minimum of explanation. Remember, that's words. So it would move it to the right, pi over 3. And there you have it.